Okay, just imagine this for a second. What if the most dangerous thing you could do for your health was, well, going to the doctor? A decision that could actually kill you faster than whatever sickness you had. Sounds insane, right? But for a huge chunk of human history, that was the reality.
Because for centuries, medicine wasn't really about healing. Not in the way we think about it, anyway.
It was about endurance. Yeah, that's right. It was basically a test of how much you, the patient, could take, not just from the disease, but from the so-called cures that were supposed to save you.
So you gotta ask, where did things go so wrong? Well, it all starts with one of the longest and, frankly, deadliest medical traditions in history, the whole idea of bloodletting.
You see, for more than 2,000 years, the big idea in Western medicine was something called the four humors theory. The thinking went like this. Your body is full of four fluids, blood, phlegm, and two kinds of bile. Your health was all about keeping them perfectly balanced. So if you got sick, well, it just meant one of those fluids was out of whack. Too much of this, not enough of that.
Now, the logic they used, I mean, it sounds completely bizarre to us now, but back then, it seemed to make sense. Okay, they thought, sickness is an imbalance. Blood is the easiest of these four fluids to get to, so let's just remove some blood. It was a straight line from A to B, and it was catastrophically, deadly wrong.
And look, this wasn't some back alley treatment for the poor. No way. Even the most powerful people in the world went through this. Case in point, George Washington. In 1799, he gets a really bad throat infection. And what do his doctors do? They immediately reach for their most trusted tool in the bag. 40%. Think about that. His doctors drained almost half of his body's blood in less than a day. His body was already fighting off an infection, and it pushed him right over the edge. He died that same night. And it probably wasn't the infection that killed him. It was the cure. But hey, draining your blood wasn't the only dangerous game in town. Believe it or not, some doctors decided to fight illness with literal poison. I mean, just look at this horrifying chart. Doctors were handing out mercury, a powerful neurotoxin for stuff like skin diseases. They'd give you arsenic for pain. They put lead in all sorts of medicines. And the real effect? Organ failure, brain damage, a much shorter life. People were literally being poisoned by the very treatments they thought would save them. So, why? What was the thinking here? Well, it was pretty simple and pretty flawed. They figured if a substance was strong enough to kill, say, a parasite, it had to be strong enough to kill whatever was making you sick inside. It's like fighting a fire with a flamethrower. Just a really terrible idea.
Okay, so if you somehow managed to avoid getting bled or poisoned, there was another nightmare waiting for you: surgery. Before the mid-1800s, the operating room wasn't a place of healing. It was a place of just unspeakable horror.
Just try to picture the scene. There's no anesthesia, no pain relief whatsoever. They had no idea what germs were, so a deadly infection was pretty much a given. Patients were wide awake, being held down by force as surgeons raced against the clock. Speed was everything, precision, not so much. And if you were lucky enough to survive the operation itself, you'd probably just die from infection a few days later. It really hammers home a chilling point. Surgery wasn't about saving lives. It was about how much pain a human being could possibly take before they just passed out. And speaking of agony, let's talk about something we can all relate to, at least a little bit: tooth pain. Because early dentistry, yeah, it was pretty much just another form of torture. One of the wildest theories they had was the tooth worm. Seriously, people believed a tiny worm was literally burrowing into their tooth and causing the ache. And the cure? Dentists would burn things inside your mouth to try and kill this imaginary pest, often causing way more harm than the toothache itself. And even without the worm theory, the standard treatments were just as bad. We're talking about pulling teeth with brute force, zero pain relief, drilling out cavities with clumsy hand tools, and sometimes they'd just apply acid right onto the nerve to kill it. It's just hard to even imagine. So all of this leads to the biggest question of all, right? The one you've probably been thinking this whole time. Why? Why on earth did people let this happen to them? I mean, really think about it. Why would anyone willingly agree to be bled or poisoned or cut open while wide awake? Well, the answer isn't simple, but it really comes down to a few big things. First, and this is the most important one, there were no other options. This was it. This was medicine. Second, Doctors were huge authority figures. You just didn't question them. Third, science was still in its baby stages. And on top of all that, people just accepted pain as a normal part of life. Survival wasn't about being comfortable. It was just about making it through.
So people didn't put up with all this because it worked. They put up with it because in a world with no other choices, the tiny, tiny chance a doctor offered was better than nothing at all.
And that's really why looking back at this stuff is so important. Look, modern medicine isn't perfect, not by a long shot. But man, understanding this history really makes you appreciate how far we've come. We've moved from an age of just enduring pain to an age where we can actually heal.
And that's the main idea to take away from all this. There was a time when surviving the treatment was actually harder than surviving the disease. Which, of course, leads to one final kind of tricky question. It's so easy for us to sit here and judge the past, but it has to make you wonder, what are we doing right now in medicine that people 100 years from now will look back on and think was totally barbaric? I'd love to hear